Welcome back. In today's lesson, we're going to be talking about finding area and perimeter of squares and rectangles. So by the end of this lesson, that's what you should be able to do. You're also going to be able to find missing side lengths given areas and perimeters already. So let's take a look at some definitions. What is the definition of a square? The definition of a square that I'm going to use is that it is a four-sided shape with all equal sides and four right angles. Okay. A rectangle is also a four-sided shape. And it only has the opposite sides are equal. And it also has four right angles. Okay, so a square, four sides are the same, and a rectangle, opposite sides are the same. And then those right angles are those on the inside there. So there's my picture of my square and my rectangle for you, okay? So let's talk about finding area and perimeter. First of all, what is area? We've used it a lot, but what does it really mean? Well, area is the amount of space inside an object. Okay, and in particularly for squares and rectangles, to find the area, it's going to be your length times your width. We can abbreviate this to A equals L times W. Okay, and that is a cursive L right there. So let's take a look at an example. So find the area of the given shape. This first one says that one side's 27 and the other side's 27. Therefore, we can deduce that this is in fact a square. Okay. If I'm doing areas length times width, I can label this side length and this side width. It doesn't really matter which one you choose to label. And we can say that area equals length times width. So my area is going to be 27 times 27. Okay, 27 times 27 is 729. So my area of this square is 729. And I want us to use units. So this is in kilometers. Whenever we find area of something, we write the unit and then we write that it's squared. It kind of makes sense because we're finding that we have a square. Okay, so try and connect those two, that word association together. I'm looking at a square, so my unit is going to have a squared on it. Okay, the second shape is a rectangle because I've got one side is 7, the other side is 14. That's two different numbers for the length and the width, but the area is still found the same way. So here's my length, there's my width. Area equals length times width. So my area equals 14 times 7. Therefore, my area is 98. And I'm going to say that's 98. And now I've got inches, so inches squared. So that is the basis of finding area if I'm given both side lengths. Just multiply them. Okay. Let's talk about perimeter of squares and rectangles. So what's the definition of perimeter? So while area is the space inside the shape, perimeter is the distance around the shape. And another way we can think about this is we can think about it as adding all sides. So instead of a multiplying relationship, now we're looking at an adding relationship. So these are the same two problems, the same square, the same rectangle, except now I'm asking to find the perimeter. Something I like to do when I'm finding perimeters, I like to label all of the sides. If I know that each of these sides is 27, then the missing two sides also have to be 27. So then I can say my perimeter is 27 plus 27 plus 27 plus 27. And then what is 27 plus 27 plus 27 plus 27? It's 108. So my perimeter is 108 kilometers. And you always want to make sure you put units, especially if units are given to you on the problem. Okay. On this rectangle, I have to label this just a little bit differently since all the sides aren't the same. This side will be 14 because its opposite side is 14, and this side will be 7. Its opposite side is 7. Find perimeter the same way. So it's going to be 14 plus 7 plus 14 plus 7. I'm adding up all 4 of the sides. When I do that math, I end up getting 42. So my perimeter is 42, and I'm going to make sure I put inches because that's the units I was given. So there is the basics for area and perimeter of squares and rectangles. But I'm going to make it a little more challenging. I'm going to give you some problems where I'm not necessarily going to ask that you find the area and perimeter, but I'm going to ask that you find a missing side length if I've given you the area or perimeter. So in this particular example, I am telling you that the perimeter is 102 feet, and what I want you to be able to do is find the missing side length. So what is that side length if I know the perimeter is 102? So this is a little bit tricky because I could guess and check. I could guess and say, oh, what if x is 10? What if x is 12? And try and keep testing and adding up the sides. But there is a more reliable method to this. The first thing you want to do is label what you know. I know that this side has to be 43 as well because the opposite side is 43. If I add both of those sides up, 43 plus 43 equals 86. Okay. Now, logically, I know that my perimeter is 102. If I take away that 86, I'm left over with 16. So in some ways, these are gone, and now this side and this side have to add up to 16. Well, what 2 things are the same that add up to 16? That's going to be 8 and 8. The other way you can think about this is you could take that 16 and you could then cut it in half and get 8. So that means that x has to equal 8. And we can say it equals 8 feet. And let's say you want to test this. If we want to test the perimeter, I can say, okay, well, what is 43 plus 8 plus 43 plus 8? Just to make sure that I've done it correctly. So I'm going to go to my calculator and do 43 plus 8 plus 43 plus 8. And do I get 102? I sure do. So that means I've done it correctly. I've gotten my x has to be 8. That's my missing side length is 8 feet. Okay, so there's some logic here. All right, it's not necessarily a full-on equation or plug and chug, but there's some logic happening here. Is if I have this value and I'm trying to find the missing piece, what logic do I need to apply to find it? Okay, example 4. Now I'm finding the missing side length again, but instead of giving you perimeter, I'm going to be giving you the area. So now I know the area is 608. So remembering that area is a multiplicative relationship, I'm doing length times width. Well, now I'm trying to find that missing side length. So instead of multiplying, I'm going to simply divide. So I'm going to take that 608, divide it by 16. 608 divided by 16 gives me 38. Okay, so if I test this, I should say that, okay, now that I'm thinking that that is 38, let's test it. Is 38 times 16 going to give me 608? Let's see, 38 times 16. And yep, it gives me 608, so a simple division worked just fine. So my answer is going to be 38 yards. Okay. So it's much easier, I think, to find that missing side length with area than it is to find the missing side length with perimeter. Okay. The last thing I'm going to want you to be able to do is draw your own rectangle if I give you a couple clues. So in this example, I'm saying the area is 60. So we're going to draw a rectangle that has an area of 60 and a perimeter of 32. So if my perimeter is 32, then I've got to do a little bit of, oh wait, I did not mean to say a perimeter of 32. I meant to say a side and one side length. Okay, so and a side length is 32. Okay, so now this is very similar to the previous example where I'm going to have, oh wait, let me take a step back. I'm sorry, can we reverse this a little bit? I apologize. Let's take a step back. I was right with my first instruction here. So I've got, and let me draw my rectangle again. Okay. So I've got an area of 60. We're going to redo this problem. And a perimeter of 32. So that means that when I add up all of the sides of this rectangle, I'm going to get a perimeter of 32. This kind of needs to start off with a little bit of guess and check. Let's say I make one side of this 10. And let's say then that side also has to be 10. Okay. What is 10 plus 10? That's going to give me 20. Okay. Can I somehow then make the other sides, right? If I have to make the area, this would have to be 6. This would have to be 6 because what's 6 times 10? Is that 60? Yep. So that works with my area. And then is 10 plus 10 plus 6 plus 6 equal to 32? Yes, it is. So my rectangle drawn is going to look like this here. 10 and 6. Okay, apologies for the misdirection there. So you kind of have to do a little bit of guess and check. If you had tried something other than 10 at the beginning, so let's test this out. Let's say that I had drawn my rectangle. In fact, we'll make a new picture down here. Let's say I drew my rectangle and I said, okay, this is 60, but instead of picking 10 at the beginning, what if I had picked, I don't know, 30? Okay, because 30 goes into 60. If I'm trying to find an area of 60, that means this side has to be 2 because 30 times 2 is 60. That must mean that this is 30 and this is 2 as well. If I go then to calculate the perimeter, I get 30 plus 30 plus 2 plus 2, and that is actually going to be 64. Well, what does it want the perimeter to be? It wants my perimeter to be 32, so this can't work. That rectangle can't work. Only this rectangle can work. So for a problem like example 5, you might have to do some guessing and checking, kind of starting with your area, figuring out what values would work for your area, and then testing if those values also work for your perimeter. So focus on today's lesson is that adding relationship with perimeter, multiplying relationship with area. Okay, good luck.